excited to get into it.
Right, 100%. And I think just speaking with Matthew yesterday kind of shares the same sentiments. When you start getting past the fandom of it on both sides, you start seeing the realistic aspects of what can happen Saturday. And for Bama fans, as confident as we are as a general fan base, I think the ones that really pay attention and understand the game of football, we understand that Florida State has some athletes too and things of that nature, and things can quickly shift being on the road. A lot of questions on Florida State side, a lot of mystery, and you won't find out the answers or what those mysteries are until kickoff. So let's go ahead and dive into a chat. So if y'all ready to get into the conversation again, welcome Cole. Jackson, you ready to get into the conversation, bro?
I'm set. I'm all set.
Hey, let's do it, man. Let's do it. So today here, as you all know, we got Florida State, Alabama in Tallahassee this Saturday. Kickoff is set for 2:30 Central Standard Time, 3:30 Eastern. And I think this game, as underrated as it may seem or be on a national standpoint, and I mean the only reason it's getting the attention it's getting is because of the brands itself, but you're talking about two teams that quote unquote underachieved. What is one of the first things, Cole, and I want you to speak from we did it last night where you being a Florida State guy, Matt being a Florida State guy, he spoke on it from for Bama from a Florida State standpoint. I want you to speak from a Florida State standpoint, being that you really right and you're right there at the program, you're doing it. From a Florida State standpoint, overall, what are one or two factors that need to be keyed on in order for this team to have a victory at home, at their home opener for against Alabama this weekend?
Yeah, I think something that was a really big, I think the last 2 seasons here at Florida State was the culture. And 2 seasons ago when they went undefeated, won the ACC championship, the culture was really, really good here. The players were bought in. You see Norvell pacing down the sidelines. I mean, he's just got that look on his face. Last year, they go to Dublin, they lose. Then they come home to Boston College. They come out as 2 touchdown favorites. First quarter, they hold the ball for 30 seconds. The team looks demoralized. And the culture last year was not good. This year, there has not been a lot of word out of the program over the summer about how the team's feeling. There's, obviously they're doing their press conferences and they're all seeming very confident. But to come out in this game and have a good start, and the first drive both ways for Alabama offensively and Florida State offensively and Florida State defensively, vice versa, that is going to be huge, not only for Florida State, but obviously Alabama, like you said, 2 teams that underachieved last year. But these players really need to come out and believe in themselves and believe that they can do it. And I said last night, I'll say it again, but this team really needs to buy in and think they're just playing another opponent. If they're going to come out, and I know it's Alabama, and I know what Alabama, the logo and the title of Alabama, what that holds, but this team, this Florida State team, really needs to come out and look at this as just another game and not a huge 3:30 Eastern Standard Time game on Saturday at home against Bama. Obviously, it's a big game, but if they go about this like any other game and they can go out and have a good start and have a good production against this Alabama defense and Alabama offense defensively, I think that is the biggest thing, is to get off to a good start and stay in this game because it can get away from them very quickly.
100%, man. So, and I hear what you're saying, but I want to look at this from an unbiased standpoint tonight, as I always do when it comes down to discussing football. And you literally highlighted exactly what I said about Florida State with some of the things that they're going to be facing before they even take the first snap. With the culture, that is the biggest thing. In college football today, you have a lack of continuity. You have a lack of carryover with your roster in programs that aren't as strong in the NIL or as far as being competitive programs and being on the forefront of the national stage. So I look at it as an opportunity for Florida State to give some type of indication that there's a culture fix at Florida State. And when I say that, if Florida State came into this game and won, is that because of just, the circumstances lining up for them being at home, first game of the season, the unknowns starting to prevail, Alabama and their system kind of just getting to the point where they're clicking? Does Florida State find a way to edge that out? If they do, is that a testament to their culture? I don't think so. I think the hype of the first game, Tommy Castellanos, his statements, in the offseason, all of the things that Tony White bringing in a new scheme, defensive scheme that, doesn't relate to the roster availability as far as your defensive personnel. You got a lot of people playing in some different spots, position-wise, mechanic-wise, technique-wise, different philosophies being asked of these players at a base level. And I think that culture thing is going to be the biggest thing. And culture is a combination of multiple things: personnel available, coaches' mentality, coaching philosophy. And Gus Malzahn has always been, everywhere he's been, he's always had issues in his program. Behavior issues, lack of discipline. Tony White at Nebraska, he's a disciplined mindset guy. Disciplined defense, always has produced disciplined defense. We know what Mike Norvell has done at Florida State is not been pretty. You know, even ever since that undefeated season and they didn't make the playoffs, it's been down here from there. And still, if you want to be honest, he's been producing winning seasons. Just hasn't been in a national contention picture. So it's going to be interesting to see how this game opens up. But like you said, that culture issue is going to be one of the primary things that I look forward to seeing if there's some change. Guys on the sideline, their demeanor when plays don't go that way, or celebration styles. All of these things are factors that I look for early in the game. Jackson, I want to throw it to you, man, from an Alabama fan standpoint, from a person that's been covering the team for a while now. What do you think are the keys to victory for Alabama overall? Give me like 2 points as far as before the snap, the first snap. What are some things that you're looking for as indicators?
Ton of pressure on Thomas Castellanos. Put a lot of pressure on him. That is one of the main keys to victory. And the other key to victory is get that passing game going. Get the passing game going. Make sure you're not only throwing it to Ryan Williams, but make sure you're throwing it to Isaiah Horton, throwing it over to Jeremy Bernard. Make sure you're throwing it to the tight end. Do not get overly reliant on one guy.
Right.
When you do, it will chew you up like a chicken nugget.
100%, man. And I'm gonna throw it back to Cole over here. A lot of people are excited about matchups in this in this game, and that's why I want to start off the first conversation. What's up, Doug? Good to see you in the chat. Good to see everybody in the chat. Everybody that's showing up, showing love for Cole, man. Thank y'all for tapping in. Make sure y'all subscribe to this channel. Before we continue, Cole, shout out where they could follow you on socials, man. I really want everybody to tap in with you because I feel like we're going to be able to connect again before the season is over with, even if it's not about Florida State, Alabama. I feel like we're going to be able to connect again. So before we get deep into the conversation, let everybody know where they can find you at on the socials, man, your primary social media, so that they can go ahead and hit you with that follow while we're live here.
Yeah, on Instagram, it's just Cole Kruger with 2 R's, just my name. I'm on LinkedIn, same name. My Twitter is Cole Crew, KRU9. That's a little bit less professional. Just there, you'll see a lot of tweets about the Panthers and the Marlins on there, but and some FSU in there. But you'll be able to find all my work on my Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter if you want to read.
Awesome.
What's your Twitter again?
Just my first name and then KRU9.
KRU9.
Yeah.
That we got you, man. Well, appreciate that, man. And so let's dive into the conversation on this side of the thing, on this side of the game. Now, we start talking matchups. We start talking about philosophy clashes and things of this nature. I talked about this earlier on the Coach Smoot Network with AP writer Kennington Lloyd Smith III, man. He's been writing for The Athletic. Now he's with the Associated Press. And one of the matchups that I'm looking forward to, and this is not even on the field, this is just philosophies. Gus Malzahn's offense with Tommy Castellanos at quarterback, similar skill sets to what we saw with Gus Malzahn and Nick Marshall at Auburn. And that was probably before your time, Cole. So I know you might have to do some research and on this play. But the Gus Malzahn year with Nick Marshall, some of the skill sets at wide receiver he had, I could see him probably trying to revitalize that style of offense against Kane Womack's aggressive 4-2-5 vision, back end coverage, up front aggressive stunt twist, blitz calls, run blitz, pass. I mean, everything you want out of the pressure packages. Kane Womack, his father, David Womack, and that Land Shark defense at Ole Miss is what what his system became popular for. I see it being a problem for Tommy, Gus, and everybody. And so when I look at the matchups that I'm excited to see, Gus Malzahn, Kane Womack, when you look at the matchups anywhere on the field, whether it's players, personnel, coaching, staffs, whatever it is, what matchup is something hype that you're looking forward to seeing play out? And then Jackson, we're going to throw that same matchup, that same question to you after Cole goes.
Yeah, I think obviously you can look at the coordinators, but I think obviously where most games are decided is the line of scrimmage. And I think that is going to be a very big area of concern for Florida State in this game. They have a brand new basically a brand new offensive line. They have one returner, it's 4 transfers against an Alabama defense that does not have a single transfer going out there. It's a very experienced defense, a defense that's only expected to get better. And this offensive line and offense for Florida State is brand new. I mean, there's 2 returners from last year. Everyone else is a transfer. So with a new offensive coordinator like Gus Malzahn, it's a little bit nerve-wracking for a team going out there at home against a big test in this Alabama. I mean, this Alabama defense is going to be very good. And if you go to the other side, their offensive line is it's one of the best, if not one of the best in the nation. And this Florida State defense, like you said, is coming in with a new coordinator, like the offense, and a new system, and players are playing a little bit out of position. So when you look at the line of scrimmage, that's a place where I think that Alabama has the advantage. And starting right there, I mean, yeah, 100% Alabama has the advantage in that. And starting on the offensive and defensive lines, it's going to be hard to sustain any pressure on Ty Simpson, which is a big key to victory for me. And it's going to be hard to protect Tommy Castellanos. And luckily, he's a scrambling quarterback, so that might help Florida State out a little bit.
100%. Jackson, what about you, man? On the same question, man, what matchup are you excited to see kind of play out in this game? And I know you're a big play guy. You want to see the wide receivers and DBs. Talk about it, Jackson. You're muted, brother.
Oh, sorry. I want to see those Florida State DBs, see what they could do against those wide receivers of Alabama. That's what I want to see. I want to see what they're going to do. And I want to see how Ryan Williams is going to go against those guys. I am ready to see Horton hear the tide calling for him.
Right. I think one of the most intriguing matchups outside of the coaching, like I said earlier, is going to be the wide receivers and the secondary of Florida State, as my camera continues to freeze on us today. But the matchup between the wide receivers and the DBs is an interesting one. I think it's going to be exciting. But I think the real matchup to me is kind of like what Cole said, the trenches, man. Florida State, James Williams at the defensive end position. You got, what's his name, Carter, I believe, is at the nose tackle position. Who's your nose tackle, the starting nose tackle?
It's going to be Daryl Jackson.
Jackson.
I mean,
Jackson.
He's coming back from last year. He showed some signs. He's going to be needed in this game a lot because I do not have a lot of trust in James Williams and Jason Jenkins to get pressure off the edge against those tackles.
Right. And I think was Jackson, Daryl Jackson in the middle is going to be key to that. If he can get some type of push against Parker Brailsford and our interior, which I don't see it happening, if they can find some way to disrupt that interior of our offensive line, which seems to be the strong point. I've been at practices and seeing these guys put in work. The interior hasn't been a problem. It's been kind of evenly matched with the amount of talent you got on the defensive line at Alabama versus the ones on that interior. Parker Brailsford, Geno Vandermark, Cam Dewberry, Jaden Roberts kind of was that rotation we've been seeing at those 3 spots, with Roberts being out up until this point, or limited up until this point. I think it's going to be interesting to see how he affects that. But my concern for Florida State and my hype for Alabama, or my confidence in Alabama, is the lack of depth of rotation at Florida State. I just don't think you guys are deep enough, especially this year. You didn't hit it in recruiting. You didn't retain a lot out of that last season's roster. Saw a lot of guys hit the portal, important pieces left. Like I said, I really think the depth of talent is going to be showcased in this game early on. And like you said, if it gets away from Florida State early in the trenches, it's going to be bad. So that matchup in the trenches, I think I'm going to be excited to see that play out. Now, let's do this, Cole. If you had a winning game plan for Florida State's offense to find success against Alabama's defense, where's the first place you start before we go in depth about anything else? Where's the first place you start in trying to establish some type of advantage for your Florida State offense?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, but the biggest thing is going to be setting up the passing game. just to start. I really expect Gus to come out there, and he's going to probably start with some RPOs just to get Castellanos warmed up and settled in. And I think watch out for Randy Pittman, the tight end, and Deuce Robinson. Deuce Robinson's going to be Castellanos' favorite target on Saturday for sure.
Mhm.
They're going to try to probably feed the ball to him and Randy Pittman early, but setting up the pass game is going to be absolutely massive for this offense so that they can even try to run the ball against this Alabama front seven. But I would come out personally. And this is what I would expect Gus to do, is to come out throwing the ball and try to get Tommy in a rhythm rather than come out running the ball. And it's hard because last season, one of the big issues is the defense would be on the field for 7-8 minutes at a time. And here comes the offense. It's 3 and out. They're on the field for 30 seconds.
Right.
So if they come out and they have the first possession, or Bama goes 75 yards and Florida State gets the ball and they go 3 and out throwing the ball, it's very unproductive. And that's how they're going to get behind quick. So it's tough because I don't think you're going to be able to run the ball early, but you need to be able to throw the ball early to set up the run and the play action.
Right. And Jackson, I'm gonna throw it to you, man. The game plan, if that's their game plan, especially early in the game, to try to get the quick pass game going, what do you see being the disadvantage in Alabama's secondary? I think last year, Alabama was probably I think they were top 10 in pass defense efficiency to end the season. You didn't see a lot of big plays or big, 40-plus yard touchdowns against Alabama last season because of the style of defense. And we didn't talk about it yet, but Deontay Lawson said something today that was key to me, and as far as where this team stands defensively and the understanding of the scheme. He said last year, week 1, we were just fully installing base concepts to this defense. This year, we're in 4th and 5th iterations, and if you all aren't football savvy or don't know the technicality or aren't verbally inclined with football, when you're talking about phases of a defense, when you're in installing base concepts in your team defense going into week 1, you're probably 3 weeks behind on where you want to be. You don't feel confident enough to throw at least your first adjustment out there. That's a scary part. But to see Alabama in this space coming into week 1, being on phases 3, 4, 5, installing in your second and third team, that's a good spot. That's a good spot to be in. So I worry for this front of Florida State, but more so for Castellanos. He's shown throughout his whole career that he does not handle pressures very well. I mean, that's why he lost the job at Boston College. Let's just be for real. My brother said something earlier this morning. If he was good enough on the run or throwing the ball on the move, he wouldn't have lost his job at Boston College, and we wouldn't even be talking about Castellanos at Florida State as a starter right now. He'll be in the draft or have been drafted, undrafted free agent for somebody's squad trying to make a roster right now in the NFL. But Jackson, when you look at the matchup, Florida State trying to get the quick pass game, how do you see Alabama counteracting that on the defensive side? And I'll kind of piggyback off of that.
Put some pressure on Castellanos, you're good to go. You can do what you did last year on the passing defense. Make sure there's not a lot of big plays. You are good to go.
I feel you on that. And I think the pressure comes from the interior defensive line, to be honest. I think where Alabama's going to be able to have advantage in this game is being able to send 3, being able to send 4, continue to get pressure because of the lack of continuity up front. And I think athletically, man, you look at what's on roster on paper, our front 4, Quay Russaw, LT Overton, James Smith, and Tim Keenan, you're talking about 4 possible first rounders in their class. If Quay Russaw decide to come out after this season with a productive year, I think he's a late first round draft pick. You got another pick in LT Overton. I think he's an early second rounder, maybe slips into the first round. James Smith already had first round grades coming out of his sophomore year. And then Tim Keenan would have been a late day 2, early day 3 pick if he came out last year, so this past season. So the experience on the front line is going to be a handful enough. And then you got guys behind them that kind of support the same skill sets, can specialize in pass rushing. I just don't see Florida State being able to be that versatile and handling that pass rush up front to get a quick pass game going. And Castellanos does not care about letting the ball go, man. That's one thing I will give him credit for. He will let that thing go, but is it to the right spot? A lot of times, no. So I like that plan. What's the second phase you think? And you can kind of just line them up now. Second, third, what are the best ways for you to see Florida State's offense to have success against Alabama's defense past the passing game? You talked about the quick pass game, getting the ball out quick. What are going to be some keys, and where's some areas? What's an area on the field on the offensive side for Florida State do you see kind of being the spot that they kind of target and make it known that's where they want to try to expose the mismatch?
Yeah, I think Alabama's front seven is very strong, and obviously their secondary is just as strong. But like you just said, I want to see Tommy go out there and slay it.
Yeah.
Coming out, I said it once, like that's my first key. But if they can come out early and they get squirrel right, running down the middle of the field open, and they can hit him for a deep shot, set the momentum, set the tone, get them set up in opponent, in Alabama's territory. They also have a speed surge, Javon Boggs. He's very fast on the outside. He's going to provide a little bit of speed for them. So they need to outrun Alabama at some point, which is a very, very tall task because I think the level of Alabama's athletes on defense double and triple some of these athletes on Florida State. But it's week one, and both these teams are going out there, at least for Florida State, a lot of unknowns. And I think that's going to play in their favor. It's obviously going to hurt them at some points, but it could play in their favor because I don't think Alabama knows how to game plan for a lot of these guys. And that might hurt them at some point, whether it's early or late in the game.
Facts, man. You can continue, man. I just want to continue to hear. I'm taking notes as you say this because you and Matthew have said a lot of things, and I don't think that you all are coming on, being that this is we're hosting as Bama Nation. I don't think you guys are coming on and just being nice. I think this is realistic football talk, and it's some things that you would love to see from your team. When you say you want to be a contender, not just nationally, but in your conference. And Florida State is about 3 or 4 steps away from that in a lot of key spots. You're talking about offensive line development, defensive line development, talking about linebacker, productivity. How consistent can this linebacker core be to even get a good gauge on where they are coming into the season? We actually got some questions in the chat for you, Cole. Let me look at this. I was scrolling and screened some calls. He said thoughts on win total for FSU, probably around 6 or 7. Kellen Pryor has a question for you. What's your thoughts on the total win total for FSU? And we can all go across the panel and get this. I had a take on this earlier too. I would love to share it.
Oh God, I don't know if I want to hear your take about this win total, but I just looked at set at about 6.5 on most sports books. I think this is an 8 or 9 win team as long as they hold it together. After Alabama, they have 2 cakewalks of games, and then they start conference play. And I think there's 4 or 5 wins on that schedule in conference play. So I think they'll win around 8 or 9 games. They're an 8-4, 9-3 team. They're not at the level they were 2 years ago, but they're also not as bad as they were last season. So I think they're going to go over their win total. I think I would say they go 9-3.
Okay. What about you, Jackson? Where you got Florida State sitting at this season?
I feel like they're an 8-4 team, but I wouldn't be surprised if they upset Miami on the first Saturday in October because, Miami is always that weird team with Mario Cristobal where they win games that they shouldn't and they lose games they shouldn't. I mean, watch them; they'll pull some crap where they're like the big dogs against Florida again, but then they'll choke against Florida State or they'll choke against Virginia Tech or Pitt, but Florida State, they're way better than where they were last year.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you don't want to be that team that's flexing about beating Cal. You go from that to going back to the verge of awesomeness.
Right.
And that whole Mike Norvell hot seat stuff, that's kind of like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. But Malzahn as the offensive coordinator, and you got Tony White getting him from Nebraska. I mean, that was a win in of itself. I mean, getting him from Nebraska. My God, that's a win. I mean, you got Margaritaville in the state of Florida, so you're
facts. I think more so from a culture standpoint, schematically, I think it's going to be 2 years before we see Tony White's changes be able to take place. Like I said, that discipline, his discipline and the way he teaches stages of that defensive 3-3-5 scheme is definitely effective, but you got to get players bought into it. It's players that fit the skill set, especially those overhang defensive backs. You got to have some strong run support guys that can cover underneath. And I don't think Florida State has that. I'm looking at Earl Little as your starting nickel corner right now. And if you look at his film from practice and while he was at Alabama, it was a reason why he was a scout team guy, for the year and a half, 2 years that he was there. And I don't think it's because he's trash. It's just a development thing. And I truly believe he's more of a boundary corner. And now he goes to Florida State and gets to play in a spot where he wants to play in that nickel corner spot. There's a lot of value there if you grow up in that position and you develop good. But in this 3-3-5, he's going to be asked to play close to the line of scrimmage a lot more than what he wants to. And I don't think Earl Little's physically going to be able to keep that up. And so if you don't have a strong safety that can go in there or a slot corner that can go in there and replace him, you're kind of living with what he does best. And you don't want to put him in situations where he's your primary last line of run support as an edge containment guy or as your what we call him the pivot or what they call not your pivot point, as your leverage point. You don't want him to be your LP in run support at his position in the secondary. So I look at it, man, with the overall over and under for this team. Like you said, I see them being. I think they get the big game against Miami the first Saturday in October. I see that one. By that time, they could be 4-1. You look at Pitt; they get Pitt coming in. I think Pitt is going to be sneaky good in the ACC. Maybe not on the national picture, but I think Pitt will be one of those teams where you just don't know who shows up week 1, week 2, week 3. But by week 6, you kind of have an identity. Physicality will be in their favor. Stanford, going out to Stanford, that's weird. Going out to the West Coast, it always happens with these ACC teams. We saw it last year. They go out to the West Coast and they just don't look like the same team. So that's a toss-up for me. But overall, like you all said, I truly believe that Florida State is a 8-4, 7-5 type squad, and 7 wins gets you a bowl game, but 8 wins puts you in that conversation of what losses do we have, right? And if your losses are Alabama, Florida, and Clemson, close and are big, and you play a close Virginia Tech, who I think is going to be a team in the ACC this year too defensively. You play these teams close and lose, or you get blown out by the SEC powers, but lose close to your conference. You're heading in the right direction. So my overall prediction for this team is definitely 8-4, 7-5 floor, 8-4 max. Like that, it's one game. That Virginia Tech game is the one I'm looking at, and maybe that Miami game, would it be in a rivalry? But I think they handle Miami this season. I really do.
Well,
so
if it was at Virginia Tech, then Florida State would be in trouble, especially if they were on a Thursday night.
Right. That's usually when Virginia Tech catch a lot of teams and be in games. It's like they're the Thursday, Friday night team for the past 5 or 6 years, seem like. So good to see that. Let's switch it. Jackson, I'm gonna take this. I'm gonna say for Alabama to have success against Florida State's defense, Alabama's offense, a lot of people like Jackson want this passing game to get going. I don't think that's where it stands. I think with Jan Miller being out, offensive line needs to have an opportunity to establish some type of dominance and some type of persona. And how do you do that? You attack the front of the defense head on. You get physical in the trenches. You allow your offensive linemen to get behind their pads, lean on the defensive front. Those linebackers, get those linebackers crashing into the interior and just stunting run blitzes. So I think right there, Alabama, even though Jan Miller's out this year, I think with the depth of rotation there, Daniel Hill, Richard Young, Dre Washington, might see some spell action from true freshman A.K. Deere, a speedy back with some size. I think that's where you see the difference, and that's where you have to get your advantage established before you see the passing game effective. I think we have the wide receivers that's going to make plays, regardless of the type of pass it is. Ty Simpson, his confidence, speaking with Ryan Williams today and hearing what he had to say about Ty Simpson's confidence, it's kind of like you have this notion that Alabama doesn't want to expose the extensive nature of their passing game. So I look for the offensive run game for Alabama to be the key to success and kind of like the focal point of what they try to establish off rip. And being in that away stadium, you're going to need that. You're going to need that. So, Cole, I throw it to you, man. When it comes to stopping the run game, where do you see Florida State? Do they have an advantage? Is it going to? What's the task look like for Florida State when stopping the Alabama run game?
Well, I think obviously Jam Miller being out is huge for Alabama, and you know it doesn't matter because this offensive line is so good. I mean, you could probably put one of the three of us back there, and we'll be able to run behind this offensive line against this defense.
Hey, with my 4.7 speed nowadays, yeah, I can do good. These bad knees.
I don't doubt it. I mean, you could probably run for 60, 70 yards against this defense, but I think it's going to be more so than the defensive line. I think it's going to be this linebacking unit that's going to have to step up and help stop the run. Elijah Herring from Memphis is going to man this defense in the middle, and I think he's going to be a big piece in this game. And he does have good run stopping ability, but he doesn't have the experience of playing at the level against a team like Alabama or an SEC team. So it scares me a little bit. Stephon Thompson, he's listed as the second string jack linebacker. And that just for me was a little bit questionable because he's one of the only people on this team that has experience playing in the 3-3-5. And I think if we see him maybe get a few reps, but I'm looking at this linebacker core, 2 returners in Omar Graham and Justin Cryer, that they were not good at stopping the run, and this defense could not tackle to save their lives last year. So I hope Tony White came in and he probably hopefully taught them how to tackle a little bit better, and hopefully they could stop the run because they could not stop the run at all last year. And that's going to be a big piece because if this Alabama team can come out and run the ball down Florida State's throat, Ty Simpson's going to be able to do whatever he wants back there, and that's not what Florida State wants.
I'm sorry, I had to get some good luck kisses from my shouty. But yeah, man, and you absolutely right. I'm glad you. I don't want this to be a bully session, chat, but Florida State has so many things coming into this game, unknowns, man, and the conversation around the unknowns has been hard to have because you really don't have any factual evidence. Though you said something about Deuce Robinson earlier. Deuce Robinson hasn't been a big playmaker since he's been in college. All the hype he came into college with, he has yet to live up to the hype. Why does it happen at Florida State all of a sudden in a new system with a new coordinator, new quarterback?
It's Florida State. I mean, he was their golden, recruit in the transfer portal.
Right.
It's just like last year when they got DJ and Roydell Williams. DJ had been terrible his entire college career, but he comes to Florida State as a transfer, and everyone's sitting here and saying, you know what? Maybe he plays a little bit differently this year. It's going to be the same thing with Deuce, but I have heard some great things from him out of practice.
I've heard a lot against that secondary that's struggling. Tommy looks good. Squirrel, who struggles with receptions, holding on to the ball, very fast, elusive in the open field, yards after catch. But you've been hearing some positive things about this offense against this Florida State defense, and to me, that's not a good thing. When you got a new system coming in and they're just dominating your defense in your scrimmages and things of that nature, that's not a good spot to be in. I like to hear balance from my scrimmages. I like to hear balance from my team peers at Bama. If offense is winning all week and we turn around next week and there's no reports of defense playing with a chip on their shoulder like Alabama had this past fall, it's a problem for me. And I think it becomes a situation where when people figure out our primary situation, our primary plan A, there's no plan A. Alternate, there's no plan B, there's no plan C, there's no plan D. We're stuck kind of like we were last year. So I'm glad to be in the position that Alabama's in. I think Florida State has what they're going into the game with. And if it doesn't work, it's going to be hard to adjust on the fly with the lack of continuity.